welcome friend to Balance is Possible with me, George, and together we are wayfinders, voyaging together towards understanding ourselves more, maybe accessing more of our potential for clarity, for maybe a bit of wisdom, maybe a bit of peace. And we do that in community because we know that the journey to peace is one that we walk together. And in so doing, we raise our energy through understanding who we really are. And we have fun, realizing that with all the challenge, we can meet with compassion, and there's still the space for lightness. And then with this new energy that we find, we then contribute our gifts to the world in small or big ways, knowing that they are meaningful because we are interconnected. And so go us, wayfinders, supporting each other in community. And I'm on this journey with you, and I hope that I can be of service to you in what I've learned. So I'll start off with my idea, which comes from Charles Eisenstein and his book, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. A really stunning book. And he talks about despair. You know, we can, seeing the injustice and the pain and the suffering and the ignorance and stupidity happening in the world, the violence, that we feel despair. You know, I'll speak for myself. I do feel those times of despair with just the magnitude of the challenge that we have and the beauty of our potential as human beings. And yet the systems that run our world are not helping us tap into that potential. And you know, we've been given this myth for so many decades that technology is going to save us. But really, it's us human beings with all the complexity of our hearts and minds that use the technology. And so that alone isn't going to save us. There needs to be a transformation in human consciousness for the real change in the systems that shape our world to really take place. And so we can come to despair. It's like, who are we as small individuals facing this huge planetary challenge? And, you know, our hearts care. We feel, you know, the suffering in the world, and maybe the suffering in the people in our lives, the suffering in our own lives. And we, you know, wonder, what can I do in the midst of it all? And Charles Eisenstein talks about, and you know, sharing the core idea of interbeing. Interbeing being a word that Thich Nhat Hanh coined. And interbeing points to not only our interdependence with all of life. You know, we absolutely know that, you know, with every breath we take, we're powered by the plants. The earth literally holds us up. The sun powers the whole system. If you go out into your shopping, we all knew during COVID who the essential workers are. You know, the bin people, the nurses, the doctors, the people in the supermarkets. You know, the gift of this interconnected web of natural and social systems that make our lives possible. And so interdependence is one level of understanding who we really are. Interbeing takes it to another level, which is to really acknowledge that it's not just that me, this separate self, George, relies on everything else, but to go a level deeper, to say that really I am relationship. There isn't really a separate George. Yes, I have thoughts and feelings that you can't feel or think, and I do have this experience that gives me this impression that I'm separate. But really, any story of George being separate from you happens within my brain, and my brain is part of, you know, the interconnected, ever-flowing, moving, dynamic unfolding that we call life in the universe. And so interbeing takes me to a joyful reverence of life, that I am connected, that I'm not just this lonely, messed up being, you know, which my inner critic, my underminer can, you know, give me some thoughts over my journey of that harshness towards judging this. Interbeing opens up a space where we can really understand ourselves to be much bigger than we would normally help normally understand ourselves. So if interbeing is who we really are, that yes, we have this separate experience and, keyword and, we are interconnected with the whole of life and our being can't be separated from the universe. We are a way for the universe to know itself. Coming back to the despair, how does this idea of interbeing help us with the despair that we might be feeling? I'm too small to make a difference. So what's the point of me doing anything? I'm meaningless and I feel overwhelmed by what's happening in the world. Interbeing can help because this idea that I'm too small to do anything is based on the assumption that you and I are these small separate selves. And if we define ourselves as small separate selves, then of course we can't change the world. It would be arrogance for us to think we can change the world. And even, the Donald Trumps of the world or the people that become presidents of powerful countries, they want to change the world in the image that they shall desire, and yet they find that there are checks and balances and they can't just have that unlimited power that they thought they could. The world's big, it's bigger than any of us. So this idea that we are separate individuals and that the burden of the world rests on our shoulders is based in the illusion that we are separate. If we can open into, and for me it is this process of opening into being as how I identify myself, then the idea that I'm too small to do anything no longer applies because I'm not this separate, lonely self in the first place. And here's the thing about systems, like system change. We talked about at the start of what needs to transform in our planet are the systems that shape our world. The thing about systems is that they take a momentum, they take a collection, a community of beings that then lead to transformation. And the transformation doesn't rely on any one individual, it relies on the collective. And there's this weird paradox that the change doesn't rely on me and you individually, and yet it does, because the waking up of that consciousness, of that community that then leads to system change does need me and you, or people like me and you, although it could happen without me and you. And I know that doesn't really make much sense, but it's a paradox. It's like, yes, the burden of the world doesn't rest on your or my shoulders, and yet the energy that we put into the world does have meaningful effects because they ripple through the interconnected system. So coming back to despair then is that we open up into being, identifying ourselves as an aspect of the whole, and knowing that the transformation of systems takes a coming together of lots of people, lots of beings in an interconnected system to transform. And so that releases the pressure. It's not just on us. And the awesome thing about that is that then we can feel a sense of meaning. Because whereas before it was like, well, I don't mean anything because I'm so small. Suddenly an interbeing is like, well, I know that me by myself isn't going to make a difference, but I am interconnected. And so how I live my life does, in real ways, although they may be hard to measure, in real ways, does contribute to the flourishing of life. So for you and I to take our steps on our journey to find a bit more peace, a bit more kindness within, to develop our compassion so that we can meet others with more kindness and less conflict. We can work on ourselves to develop our emotions without conflict. Then, that inspires the people around us that there's a different way of being that's possible. And if we come together, then we can begin to come into community and then work together in system change. And maybe your life is, simple and maybe living off the land, or just, tending to your garden. And the Taoists of ancient China, they would go off to the caves, and you think, well, maybe you're escaping life. But into being invites us to not judge the actions, like measuring. I'm meaningful by the more impact that I have, which is a lot of the dominant stories that we have. It's like, I've got to do a lot in order to be a meaningful human being. And into being, because we're interconnected, it all contributes. There is meaning to be found. And the more important question for us, if we do want to find meaning in our lives, is not how big is the impact that I'm having, which puts loads of pressure and stress on ourselves, but instead to ask, where does this desire to contribute come from? Like, what is there something in me that is being called forth that feels meaningful? So maybe helping a loved one, maybe volunteering at a community event, and maybe living on the land and nurturing the land, and maybe finally taking some time to look after yourself and to resource yourself, maybe after years of meeting other people's needs. Maybe this season for you is meeting your own needs. The invitation is to come into ourselves and to find, where is this desire to do what I'm doing coming from? Am I striving to contribute because I want to feel meaning and I want to feel enough? And I can notice some of that tendency in me. It's like, I'm so passionate about what I do, but also, I tread that balance of really coming back to this into being, to just, George is a useful story to help me navigate my life, and, I have a name, and, that's all good. And I am life itself, and can I resource myself in that? So then I'm not putting pressure on myself for George to achieve everything. So where do your desires to contribute come from? And if you can trust that, if being with your family and just showing up your family feels meaningful and enough, trusting that. And then maybe acting to contribute in a bigger level, donating, volunteering, campaigning, activism. If you feel called to, that's also a valuable way of contributing to that system change as well that is so needed. And for me on my journey, I see a lot of the spirituality that's communicated today on the internet and the new age spirituality, in my view, doesn't capture the systemic view of life, doesn't capture our interbeing with the earth, the ecology that supports all of life, that supports our ability to meditate and have cool psychedelic experiences where we feel one with the universe. So for me, when I find an understanding of who I am, that I am interconnected with the whole of life and I'm a manifestation of the mysterious intelligence of the universe, then for me that is a great wow moment that then makes me want to serve life, to be contributing to the flourishing of this great mystery and miracle that I am a part of. And the cool thing is that contribution and service feel good, whether it's big or small. So if we aim for service instead of success, it eases the burden that we can put onto ourselves. If we're aiming for success, we've defined ourselves currently as unsuccessful and we're craving, up here, whereas service is contributing, feeling good in any amount. And that is a much more powerful and joyful energy to live our lives from, to aim for service instead of success. So if you're feeling despair, think about your connection. Remember, you're not this separate self. And then since we are interconnected, remembering that your contributions do have meaningful effects, and checking in with where does my desire to serve and contribute come from? Is it from guilt? Is it from trying to be enough? Is it from conditioning? Or can I call this action from somewhere deeper within me to serve life, to contribute to life, and to not judge the amount that we give, but to trust that what is being called of us is enough. So I hope some of those ideas can serve you, and welcoming your thoughts on the chat. And let's get into the chat. So we've got Ariel saying we could just make systems that better suit us. I doubt old systems will ever change because they were designed not to. Yeah, so system change sometimes, there's four stages of system change. There's the growth. So let's think about a forest. So how do forests start? You have the saplings, and then there's this growth phase, and then there reaches an equilibrium where the forest is stable and it can stay like that for a long time. But then maybe the resilience starts dropping. So we've got the growth, the stable phase, and then we've got the decay phase, where maybe there's a fungus or a disease going through the forest, so some of the trees die, which means that then there's the higher risk of a fire. So that release phase, it's called in systems theory, decay phase, the resilience starts going down, and then there can be a snap moment where like a huge forest fire takes place. If the forest was more resilient, there wouldn't be the dead wood there, and so the forest fire wouldn't continue. So the decay was needed for that big transformation. So decay, then release. But then we know that actually fires in forests, they do create new life. They burn away the old, and that makes space for the new. And so fires are a part of the natural ecosystem. So there are the four stages of system change: growth, stability, release, and then transformation. And then the new system grows, reaches an equilibrium. So as we are all feeling, we're going through this release phase, we're going through a decay in the stability of our systems. And, there's been chaos throughout history and throughout life. And, many people would think, wow, we live in the most interesting of times. As the Chinese proverb says, may you live in interesting times. And maybe each generation says, no, really, this is the worst it's been. This is seriously interesting times. And, our generation's not any different. What is different, though, is ecology. It's like before, the challenges of humanity would affect a kingdom, a province, a country. Like the Mongols invading your town and slaughtering everyone. I say that with a smile on my face. I mean, this is end of the world for that community, right? Having a warring tribe come and slaughter everyone. And, that feels like the end of the world. And for that community, it is. But human power for so many generations was not big enough to affect the whole planet. But now we are affecting the whole planet. We're transforming the atmosphere, warming up the whole planet. And there's now as much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as there was when there were crocodiles in the North Pole, when there were dinosaurs roaming. And that's the trajectory that we're going towards if we don't change our course. And that's because of all the fossil fuels, as you know, that we're putting into the skies. So we are now powerful enough to transform the whole planet. And so suddenly the challenges of our times and the systems that shape our worlds, that, previously injustice and warfare, slowly but surely there were definite signs of progress, like more and more people getting the vote, women getting the vote, LGBT communities getting rights. It was only 60 years ago that it was illegal to be gay in the UK, 70 years ago. So, we have made a lot of bounds in the care that we feel for our fellow human beings and the compassion that we meet the world in. but also the systems that shape our world are destroying our ability to live on our planet. So we are going through this decay phase, and indeed it will be system change where the old systems that shape our world are no longer serving us and new systems will need to be found. And that's for us to work out, like all of us together. And the interesting thing about this system change is it is bigger than any one of us. A quote I love from Thich Nhat Hanh is, the next Buddha will be a Sangha. So a Sangha is a community. The next Buddha, the next being that helps bring humanity into the next level of consciousness will be a community. It's much bigger than you or I. And the solutions are going to take a whole movement of people to find that out. In some ways it's exciting. Obviously it's a privileged thing for me to say that's exciting given, what's happening in Gaza and around the world and the pain and suffering and so many people are experiencing, and the injustice of the systems that are currently running our world, but also the great potential that we have now, an interconnected world connected through the internet. And like a forest fire does just suddenly burn a forest down that was stable for hundreds of years in a couple of days, system change can be very quick. A quote I love about hope, which really helps me hold on to hope, is that hope is not a state of the world. It's a state of mind where we work towards something that's valuable in itself, not just because it's likely to happen. So normally, we feel hopeful if something's likely to happen. I hope it will happen. It's likely to happen. But the hope that really is going to help us stay resourced through the chaos that's going to continue to come until we trust that there'll be some change on the other side, is that hope is not a state of the world, it's a state of mind where we work towards something that's valuable in itself, not just because it's likely to happen. So the beauty of the human spirit, the potential that you and I have, the potential that all of us have as human beings for learning, for forgiveness, for healing. And that comes from learning about ourselves, the journey that you're taking and that I'm taking to, maybe meditate and to sit quietly and find out, who am I? Who am I in the midst of all of this? And to explore ideas, ancient and modern, to help us understand ourselves. And to realize when we read ancient ideas that so long as we've been human, we've been asking these questions about who we are. And the answers, a lot of them haven't changed. And so then that can give us a sense of grounding that, this is bigger than me. And this is called being human. And yet there is great potential that I have when I really understand myself and I put time into developing my abilities to understand myself and communicate myself with skill and compassion. And then maybe if I feel called to stepping into community and to contribute to the flourishing of life and meeting our deep needs for meaning and connection as we do that. So we're doing it together. Jamelia is sharing, instead of thinking how I can't make a difference, maybe not in a full way, but I can start a chain reaction through other people that maybe can make a little bit of change later. The system change is also within the individual. Out of our trauma, we grow to transition to a change. Trauma awareness is such an important step in our healing, both for ourselves. It's like, it's not my fault, that I'm hurting. It's just like my parents were traumatized in a traumatic world, and they did the best they could given their resourcing and the education that they had. And for most of us, they traumatized us in certain ways, even though they, the parents deep down had some care and love. And we live in a world of trauma. And if we can begin to see that hurt people, Those people that are hurt themselves hurt other people because they haven't had their deep needs met. They haven't been supported to meet their own needs in a way that doesn't involve violence. And so then the strategies that hurt people use in order to meet their own needs or lash out against the injustice that they felt is to hurt other people. And if we can come to that understanding, then that's where we build compassion, that it's not their fault that they were born into this highly complex world, traumatized world, and it's not my fault or your fault if we are suffering. And that acknowledgement doesn't mean that then we fall into floppiness and just like, well, it's not my fault and I don't need to do anything and I'm a victim to life. Like that compassion is the real starting point. It's just meeting ourselves. Okay, I'm here. And can I just meet myself where I am? And in so doing, the paradoxical power of compassion is that then we find there's freedom and space to move from where we are. If we acknowledge the pain, if we acknowledge the trauma, then we can move from there. I've done some work with people in recovery, addicts that went to prison for crimes to meet their fix. It's a really powerful moment that I've witnessed when being in these groups with these people, when they meet that pain that, the trauma that they had in their lives, the pain that they inflicted on others, and just to meet it, like, okay, here the pain is. When we meet our pain with even a semblance of kindness or openness or lightness, if compassion is a word that doesn't work for you, then that is the gateway and an important marking point on the journey towards healing and reconciliation. So it's powerful, and that's why the Buddha and wisdom teachers for thousands of years have been teaching this, because it is really the evolution of human consciousness. Like if we think about the brain, you've got, classically, you talk about the three brains. You've got the lizard brain or the croc brain, then you've got the mammalian brain, the limbic brain, and then you've got the neocortex, which is the biggest in human beings, which is the seat of our ability to reason and to think. And, crocs, they're fight or flight. Like I get my Instagram feed to show me videos of animals and crocodiles doing crazy things. And, crocs are pretty wild. It's just like, just particularly Australia, your nature just, as Australia moved away over 80 million years, some crazy stuff happened there. Crocs are fight or flight, right? So there's a threat, or there's prey, and there's fight or flight. And, we still have that biology within us. If we feel there's a threat, we've been traumatized, we can go into fight or flight. And then our body, through trauma, can internalize that response. And so the evolution of human consciousness maybe is a bit of a cliche way of saying this journey that we take from going from the croc brain to the prefrontal cortex to the human brain, where we can begin to inquire, to investigate what's here. Okay, so there's an embodied reaction against my parents and the harm that I've felt I've had inflicted on me. And the journey from going to croc to not is to find the space to say, I forgive you. I understand that you as my parents were traumatized as well. And even though you didn't have the skills at all to be able to really show your love to me, I know that there was love there, despite the fact that you hurt me. And so that does take that cognition, that thinking, to be able to bring that painful, traumatic memory that's embodied in the croc brain into healing. And that's why teachings from the Buddha and before and after and around the world, Taoists, Christians, whatever wisdom tradition you want to look at, compassion is really at the heart of it. Because it's hard. It's hard to rewire that programming that has been locked into our nervous system, that fight or flight, wrong or right, pain, not pain, going to forgiveness, spaciousness, lightness, openness. So if you're working with trauma in your own life or with people that you care about, just sending my best wishes to you. And it's important work, and it's challenging work and healing work. And that trauma awareness that we bring into our own lives and into how we relate with the people in our lives will then bring an energy of how then we look at the world and the pain in the world. We reduce our judgment, and we more easily see the world for what it is. We're not angels. We have damaging tendencies, but we also have a lot of beauty in the human spirit, in the human body and mind. And trauma is one of the biggest blockers from us accessing that potential. Something I've always questioned is, even with understanding trauma and being compassionate, how do we still deal with those people whose intentions are to hurt you? Cool, so we'll do one more, and I'm always grateful for your questions before we could go into some practice and share some breath together. How do we deal with those people whose intentions are still trying to hurt you? So one of the most challenging teachings in Taoism, also one of the most powerful teachings in Taoism, is chapter 49, where Lao Tzu, the author of the Tao Te Ching, the foundational text of Taoism, the ancient Chinese philosophy, says, "The sage, the wise person, treats all those who are good with goodness. And the sage treats all of those who are not good with goodness. Because the core of the sage's being is goodness. The sage treats all those who are kind with kindness, and all those who are not kind with kindness, because the truth of their being is kindness. The sage, the wise person, treats all those who are truthful with truthfulness, and all those who are not truthful with truthfulness, because the core of their being is authenticity, integrity." So that's quite a challenging idea. Am I going to be kind and honest and good to those people who are trying to hurt me, who are manipulating me, who are lying to me? And this is where, compassion, we need to also keep in mind that compassion isn't just saying yes to everything. Oh, yes, please, I'll roll over and, manipulate me just how you'd like to be. I really see the essence of goodness within you. So please take my money, my heart, my time and energy. No, we can still have our boundaries. And the nourishing no. Thank you, but no thank you. The nourishing no is something that really resonates with me. It's like no can be quite a challenging word to express. To express our boundaries is something that takes practice. The nourishing no is actually realizing that the no is a gift. To say, this is who I am, and this is my truth, this is my boundaries, this is my energy, and thank you, but no thank you, is actually a gift. Because you'll know the bullies, they'll keep going until you eventually stand up for yourself. Like, I went to a new school in sixth form when I was 17, and I was lonely and kind of the nerdy kid because I didn't fit in. And there was one of the rugby jocks. It was kind of like out of a high school musical film from America. Like, this new school had the jocks and the nerds and the beautiful girls who hung out with the jocks, and I'm like in the library feeling lonely. And there was one bully who would pick on me and go, just like every time he would come to me, he'd just do this annoying noise. I'd come from a state school, and I was kind of like, although the nerdy kid, I was also had the potential to be a bad man. Such a ridiculous thing to say. But eventually he was just annoying me so much that I pinned him up against the wall and I said, if you ever do this again to me, I'll have you. And this is a big rugby guy, biggest guy in the year. And what happened? You know, maybe, did he fight with me? Me, this kind of skinny kid. He never did anything to me again after that. So funny. Just, yeah, never again. So sometimes we've got to express our boundaries, and, you know, maybe I wasn't doing the nourishing no of gently picking him up and saying, please, sir, I have a deep need for respect and I wish for you to treat me differently. You know, sometimes we've got to honor the times when the anger does protect us. You know, anger is a protective energy, but that anger can be destructive as well. So ideally, the nourishing no is where we say, thank you, but no thank you. This is me. This isn't working for me, and these are my boundaries. And we can say that with love and compassion, and still, you know, understand that this person's got their own stuff that maybe they're projecting onto you, and you don't need to take that, but you can also build compassion for them, that, you know, they've got their own stuff to work out. Yeah, we can close our practice with our Tai Chi salutes, fist with the left hand, palm over with the right, and a bow, acknowledging all the beautiful beings that we're sharing our practice with around the world, honoring you for your journey. Thank you so much for joining today. I'll be here next time, tomorrow, same time, and then on Sunday, half an hour before, so 4:30 European time, I've got my course on Wayfinder Academy, where we get deep into meditation. And if you'd like to join, it would be beautiful to be meditating with you and getting deeper. Last session was, really magic. And so if you are free on Sunday, you can join here, and there are recordings available. Wayfinder Academy is only $17 a month, and it supports me and the team. There's 13 in the team now. And joining Wayfinder Academy or Master Gu's Wudang Taoist Wellness Academy are some of the main ways that you can support our work. But whatever you do, I'm grateful for your presence, wishing you the best, and hopefully see you tomorrow or another time. Ciao, ciao for now.